Hello everyone! Yay! It's me, Whimsy and Flopsy! Yes, Flopsy says hello. This is my cat's bunny. And yes, it does symbolize the rabbit hole that we enter when we hang out with a Whimsy. So, a couple things we're going to cover today. The first is we're going to review the remote viewing meditation, if you feel more comfortable calling it that. But basically, nightly I do a heart-centered meditation, and then from a place of love with permission, I try to see if I can feel or sense something from another person. So we always go with permission, and excuse me, sometimes we'll see a symbol or an idea or a thought. Sometimes it's just whimsy, it's imagination, but even within your imagination, if it's just your imagination, I would not dismiss it, because even if something is just pretend or just whimsy, sometimes there can be a very profound truth even in the whimsy, right? So last night I did a remote viewing, and it was a really good spiritual lesson for me, because I found myself when I was doing these nightly meditations and putting them up on YouTube, and I didn't expect it to be this successful, and I got very nervous and said, got a little nervous about it. But then I just realized that, this is one of the fun aspects of who I am, and we're just going to have fun with it. So I did my heart-centered meditation last night. And I had not intentionally meant to focus on Michael Cohen, but he did come in. And then I found, as I focused on Michael Cohen, I saw the energy passing from Donald Trump to Michael Cohen, and from Michael Cohen making contacts to various different people who are in the Russian mafia, and that they in turn that became the avenue with which to do business with people who were Russian oligarchs. And it was interesting because it kind of contradicted what Donald Trump had said. Donald Trump said, I gave him a job as a favor to a friend. But when I looked at it from an energetic perspective, how I interpreted it was more that Michael is the guy that does stuff for us. Michael's the guy that does stuff for this particular group of people. Michael has contacts. So if that is accurate, then it kind of makes the Mueller probe a little bit more interesting, because it suggests that Michael Cohen will be the person that hands over the books and shows how the contacts were made between the Russian mafia, and what his work was as a go-between between the Russian mafia and Donald Trump. So that's how it looked in the remote. Because I always ask permission, if I meditate on somebody and say, with love, and I ask you permission to be in your personal space, I can ask a question that's specific, and either I get the answer back or I don't. It's a gift, and that was kind of what I took away last night. It's a gift. Sometimes you get something, sometimes you get absolutely nothing. And you never want to just go straight into a remote. You never want to go straight into, okay, let me see, what's Joe. You don't want to just turn into a spy who wants to dig up dirt on anybody, because the early preparation, I think, is the most important part of the process. And the early preparation, if you're doing this type of meditation, is to always get yourself in a very deep state of relaxation. I sometimes will use mantras, and then I get, excuse me, and then from a state of deep relaxation, that is when I get white light, pink light coming up from the ground, coming up the chakras, and then also coming down from Father Sky, Mother Earth is kind of how I think of it, and bringing the energies together and allowing yourself to be filled with divine love and purpose and clarity, so that you are protecting yourself, and you're also opening yourself to see things with objectivity and clarity. And from a place of love, objectivity, and clarity, you then attempt to open up and to really hear the other person's side of the story or any information that they may want to be giving you. Somebody had asked yesterday, does the person that I'm making energetic contact with know that I'm there? Not consciously, but on an unconscious level, they must want this information to come out, or it may be about to come out, because I don't invade people's space and I don't go in where I don't belong. It's always done from a place of empowerment and from a place of healing, and it's always what on some level the person wants you to know. So that is what I wanted to share with Michael Cohen. The other, and just the significance of the raid on Michael Cohen in terms of why he's so important, because he is the lawyer that's the go-between between the Trump, the Russian mafia, and these oligarchs. And despite what Michael Cohen may say about Trump ruining his life, he was doing these kinds of dealings before he met Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was a big fish. It was a big account, but it didn't make Cohen who he is. So I just wanted to be clear about that. I also want to be clear about the energy I felt around the GOP, the Republican Party, during the shutdown. There was a lot of extreme anger from extremely wealthy donors. So it wasn't just that the senators had to deal with people protesting on the Senate floor. You have to realize that very, very, very powerful people, the largest government contracts, billionaires and trillionaires, were also picking up the phone and calling the Senate because they lost billions of dollars from this shutdown. And for that reason, they have washed their hands of Donald Trump. Excuse me, there's a siren. They're not, here's the thing that bothered me about this aspect of the remote. They were not bothered by the fact that children were in cages. They might have been slightly bothered by the prejudice, but what they really care about is their interest, their business, their profits, and whether or not this president can do the job of pushing their agenda. And it was sad to see that so many laws in the United States are created by lobbying groups and not because they're just. An example of that I saw during a remote was that I saw the creation of the crime bill that had gotten passed by both houses. And theoretically, it's a great idea to have a crime bill, but interspersed within the crime bill was a lot of perks for the lobbyists, particularly the pharmaceutical industry that's hoping to diversify their portfolios by investing in cannabis dispensaries. But it was also a great remote in the sense that I got to see all the cool things that the pharmaceutical companies would be inventing in the future using medical marijuana. One of the things that's going to be coming out in terms of medical marijuana invention is that there's going to be a new inhaler for people who have cancer or who have chronic pain and depression, but they're concerned about their lungs. It's going to work similar to an asthma machine, and you're just going to be able to spray the marijuana into the lungs. There's one pharmaceutical company that will be developing that. They're also going to be developing a puff machine where it can puff up the nose, and that'll be very helpful, particularly for people in hospice who may have very little energy, can't move because they're extremely debilitated. So that is one of the inventions that I was able to see, was the little puff up the nose for people in hospice. They also have a group of patches they're going to be coming out, marijuana patches that you can stick under the arm. This is going to be good for chronic pain, inflammation, and also for veterans. The veterans will be able to get the patches. And the final delivery system that the pharmaceutical company is developing, which I was also able to see, which was dissolvable lozenges under the tongue, what we call troche in medicine. Those will go under the tongue and work, and that can be for someone who's slightly agitated prior to a medical procedure. You can prescribe some marijuana troche that will go under the tongue, get them in a very relaxed state, so long as the person doesn't have an adverse reaction to marijuana. And it can be very helpful if they're experiencing stress or anxiety prior to a procedure. So all of that's going to be approved And it's an example of how lobbyists will come in and change our laws, so that we have to ask ourselves, are our laws just, or are they based on who benefits and where the people who make the money determine the laws? And so that is a sad part of Washington that I saw from all of this. And that the GOP is divesting of this president because they believe he is mentally ill, not because they're opposed to his policies. That they actually promote his policies. They just don't want his behavior to be so erratic it's going to cost them money. I'm sorry, but that is how I saw it. I have spent a couple of times in my meditations focusing on North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Is that how you say his name? Please correct me if I'm mistaken. And the impression I got from Kim Jong-un is that he is a very frightened person, paranoid, very insecure. I always see intense poverty when I'm in North Korea. When I say intense poverty, I mean the poorest of the poorest Americans in rural America that don't have a working car, holes in the knees of your jeans, trying to feed yourself on $21 a week. That level of poverty, I've just never seen such extreme poverty as what I see in North Korea. And the poverty of North Korea is incredibly embarrassing for the leader of Korea. So I think of him as a junkyard dog. He is sitting in his junkyard, frightened of the outside world, frightened that the outside world's going to hurt him, and he's trying to make bombs and weapons, it looks like, from things that have been tossed out by when the Russians are done with something, they give him some of their junk. Also, he's getting aid from China, but it's really a sad state of affairs, and the people themselves are not getting the resources and the money they need. Instead, they're just closed off in this state of perpetual fear. But the people are so desperate that they're willing to open up to the West because this is not sustainable anymore. Whereas the leader is very frightened of the outside world. So that is kind of how it feels when I go into North Korea. In terms of Venezuela, I decided to throw cards whether or not American troops would go to Venezuela. I decided I'm going to throw cards on Venezuela because, to be honest with you, for whatever reason I'm blocked. I can't see anything, and for whatever reason during my remote meditations I'm not able to see anything. So for that reason, I do want to throw cards today on the future of Venezuela. So we're just going to go ahead and shuffle the cards. Somebody had said, one of the people had written about, I saw pressure from investors in Starbucks telling Schultz not to run, that some of his investors don't want him running. And somebody had said, no, the investors will support him. I don't know, I'm from Seattle, Washington, and we are pretty staunch Democrats. I can see that some of the early investors and some of the main investors in Starbucks would not be thrilled with him competing with the Democratic Party. I think it will be a source of tension, but we'll just see how it plays out. That's certainly the impression I got when I looked at those cards, was conflict from his base, conflict from his investors, that they don't want him to run. Not all of the investors in Starbucks want Howard Schultz to run, and it's going to be, it may even determine whether or not he runs at all. Let's take a look at what we have here. This is on the future of Venezuela. Venezuela, it looks like possible mediation or an attempt to avoid any kind of war or tension. Knight of Cups comes bringing peace, romance, bearing gifts. Water is also a healing. It's viewed from a healing perspective. King of Cups is a ruler, artistic, creative, compassionate ruler. So let's try and get some let's try and get some more details about this, but it looks like there's an attempt at mediation here. The Lovers, This is a card of looking to God or spirit, but also through the human relationship. It's temptation, but it has a more spiritual aspect to it. Lovers implies negotiation and love and communication between others, hopefully with resolution, with Ace of Pentacles, which is wealth and money. I don't get war cards with this right now. I see money coming in, healing coming in, also mediation could be coming in, which is what I was hoping for. Karma is ending, whatever the karma was. You can see that the Wheel of Fortune is ending. It's in the top of the card chart. Was an unhealthy situation. Page of Cups brings messages about health and healing. Was an unhealthy situation. But the cards that are moving in are money, health, and healing and love. So this leads me to suspect that there's going to be some kind of an action to try and resolve the situation, hopefully without violence and possibly through some kind of mediation. And that part of that mediation will involve financial contracts and business. And again, I assume this has to do with trade routes. Where is the oil being sold to? I know Americans buy 40% of the oil. Part of the reason why America and Russia are fighting over who's going to rule Venezuela has to do with these contracts for resources like oil. But we're seeing big money coming here with Ace of Pentacles. What sits behind us? I don't think any of us are surprised that the past of Venezuela would come with a Ten of Swords, death, destruction, pain. It's one of the most difficult cards to see in the card chart. Some people would call it the most negative card in the card chart. The near future that comes, thieves fleeing. So if there is going to be some kind of a confrontation, the thieves or the criminals, the bad actors could flee, because we see this card crossing here between the top card, which is an inverted Wheel of Fortune, coming to an end. Things are coming to an end, and people running and fleeing and taking the money, taking the wealth and running. So I don't know much about Venezuela, but all I can tell you is this looks like stability, calm, healing, wealth coming to the country, and whoever the bad people were, criminals, thieves, etc. Seven of Swords is a thief card. Time is coming to an end for that group of people with the Wheel of Fortune coming in. Previous offers had been rejected. There was something of a stalemate, which is where we're at right now. What is around us? Again, healing. All these cup cards are coming in, which is about love and healing. Hopes and fears, the sun. And final outcome, justice, truth, enlightenment, the light bearer. Torah, ta-or, in Hebrew means bear the light, the bearer of the light, Torah. Torah is justice. Torah is also divine justice, spiritual justice. So I would say with a high priestess coming in, if this is the international legal community, if there's any kind of legal intervention, it will side with the people in a way that will bring harmony, an end of conflict, and improvement in the financial outlook of Venezuela. And so for that reason, I would say that this is a positive outcome. In terms of clarification, not everyone's going to be happy with the judgment, and there will be some infighting, but ultimately it's a better outcome for the people overall. All right, so that was the throw I got for Venezuela. It looks like there's going to be some type of mediation and healing. Financially, there's going to be a breakthrough that's going to help the people. It's moving in a positive direction. There could be international mediators getting involved to review contract, trade, etc. And I see a concern about fleeing with money or some kind of corruption and injustice that may happen prior to things becoming more stable, but ultimately they are more stable. I don't see war, but I could predict with cards like this possible peacekeeping troops coming in. All right, thanks for watching, everybody, and all I can say over and over again is that with love and gratitude, I do this channel, and you guys are great. I've really been lifted up, and it's wonderful when you turn 55 years old and you decide that you're just not going to care what people think anymore. You're just going to let your freaky light shine and give love to the world, which is all I ever wanted to do since I was a little whimsy, is bring joy and happiness and positivity to others. And I'm so grateful that I can do it here on this channel. And thank you for the support. I also want to thank people for sitting through those incredibly boring commercials that we do air here on Tarot with Whimsy. Last I checked, $250 was raised for charity. I've already donated some of that money to charity. It went to the Ocean Cleanup Project. And I'm also going to be donating to other organizations as well. And as we donate the money that we have raised here, we'll let everybody know how much money was raised and which organizations received those donations. So with love, light, and gratitude to you for all your support, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Blessings. Bye.